Hi, my name is Joanna Whitney. I am an intuitive artist, a student of natural law, and an energy healer. And I kind of decided I'm going to do something different now because it's come to my attention through prayer and meditation that I really have to go back to the roots of natural law and discuss those. I think I started doing that last time when I did a day of natural law in life. And then I just paused and prayed about it and thought, like, originally when I was doing formal consensus, it was under the presumption that we were on an equal playing field of people that all wanted freedom. But what I discovered was through experience that that isn't really true at this point. It seems that we may want freedom in an idea sense. It's a nice idea. I want freedom, but there's some conditions that are necessary in order to have freedom. And it seems that to me that a lot of us don't know what those conditions are. So originally, so I always or have been recently saying what natural law is at the beginning of this podcast, and I'll repeat that. It's a set of non-man-made, immutable conditions which govern the behavior of beings who have the ability to know right from wrong. And I have said that the natural law violations, there are 5 natural law violations, which I'll post in the description, and they all boil down to theft. That's the main violation of natural law. And then the positive natural law statement is do unto others as you would have others do unto you. But there are other natural laws which go back thousands of years, and I'm going to go in depth into one set of them, which can be found in the Kybalion. Whoops, there we go, the Kybalion, which was created by the 3 initiates. It's a anonymous book, and it was originally printed in 1911, I think. And people have speculated about who these 3 people are, but it doesn't really matter because the point is they made themselves anonymous so that they wouldn't be immortalized themselves, but would rather shine light on immortal teachings, which were brought forward by Hermes Trismegistus in ancient Egypt. And it's a very short synopsis of Hermetic teachings, which, you can find books and books about Hermetic teachings in occult libraries. And when I say occult, what that means is that it's hidden knowledge. Occult, the word occult comes from the word ocular, which means eye. And so these teachings have been occulted for the purpose of creating a power differential between the people who know these teachings and the people who don't. And what's happened is that the teachings were thousands of years old, and they were originally taught in mystery schools and kept from the general populace because of the idea of not casting pearls before swine. But we're at this point now where they're being held for evil purposes because the people who know about them are not using them for the good of humanity anymore. They're using them to gain power over humanity. And they're not that difficult for us to learn. In fact, they're out there in a lot of different teachings, recent teachings, constantly. But each author puts their own spin on it and even changes the names of the laws to suit their personal agenda, it seems. So I'm just going to read this book. And I mean, these books, there's like many different versions of this book available, but they're all basically the same. And you can download them. I mean, I'll even put a link to a PDF that you can download of this book. And I'm just going to read it and talk about it. It says on the title page, a study of Hermetic philosophy of ancient Egypt and Greece by the three initiates. And then it says, the lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding. So that means, you know, this may go right over your head if you're not ready for it, but you can become ready for it. I know for myself, when I first was introduced to this book, which was, I think was in 2015, some of it went right over my head. But I have actually been living according to natural law for over 30 years. And actually, I've been living, so what I'll do is I'll just read off the 7 Hermetic principles of the Kybalion, and just so you can get an idea of what they are. The principle of mentalism is the first one. The second one is the principle of correspondence. The third is the principle of vibration. The fourth is the principle of polarity. The fifth is the principle of rhythm. The sixth is the principle of cause and effect. The seventh is the principle of gender. And then there's a hidden law that Mark Passio coined, the 8th law, the principle of care. Maybe back in those days when this book was originally put together, care was inherent to the population. People cared about living morally, or they cared about each other, or they weren't so materialistic as they are now. The Satanists hadn't been bombarding us with the opposite of these laws for the last, let's see, 1911. I don't know. I can't, my math is not good. So 200 years or whatever. No, it's 100 years. So he put in there that the eighth lost principle of care. So you would care. The reason to actually study these principles is because you care. That would be the reason to do it. And then the book goes on to how to apply them, etc. So I've been living basically in the principle of cause and effect. The mystery school to which I belong delved deeply into the law of cause and effect, and I was able to learn how to live by natural law within the law, the part of cause, to change my point of view so that the effect of my cause would become positive from negative, let's say. And due to the law of correspondence, which is the second principle, because I was living in the law of cause and effect and learning how to live morally within the law of cause and effect, the other laws populated my life. because this is a fractal universe, and the law of correspondence, which I'm not going to get too into right now, means that if I create a microcosm of morality, then that is going to be reflected in my macrocosm, or I reap what I sow. However, there are these other laws in play. So I'm going to go through this book, and you can feel free to buy the book yourself or download it. And I'm going to provide other materials that where you can study it more deeply. But I'm going to start with the beginning here, the introduction. So we take great pleasure in presenting to the attention of students and investigators of the secret doctrines this little work based upon the world-old Hermetic teachings. There has been so little written upon the subject, notwithstanding the countless references to the teachings and the many works upon occultism, that many earnest searchers after the arcane truths will doubtless welcome the appearance of this present volume. The purpose of this work is not the enunciation of any special philosophy or doctrine, but rather is to give the students a statement of the truth, capital T, truth, that will serve to reconcile the many bits of occult knowledge that they may have acquired, but which are apparently opposed to each other and which often serve to discourage and disgust the beginner in the study. Our intent is not to erect a new temple of knowledge, but rather to place in the hands of the student a master key with which he may open the many inner doors in the temple of mystery through the main portals he has already entered. There is no portion of the occult teachings possessed by the world which have been so closely guarded as the fragments of the Hermetic teachings, which have come down to us over the tens of centuries which have elapsed since the lifetime of its great founder, Hermes Trismegistus, the scribe of the gods, who dwelt in old Egypt in the days when the present race of men was in its infancy. So just for a moment, Hermes Trismegistus. So Trismegistus means thrice great, 3 times great. And that harkens back to 3, which is the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, which really should be Father, Holy Spirit, Son. And which means, the reason I changed that is because thought, the Father is the thought, the intuition, energy is the Holy Spirit, and the Son is the action. So Hermes Trismegistus was thrice great in that his thoughts, his emotions, his intuition, emotions, and his actions were congruent. So that's why he was called thrice great Hermes. Contemporary with Abraham, and if the legends be true, an instructor of that venerable sage, Hermes was and is the great central sun of occultism, whose rays have served to illumine the countless teachings which have been promulgated since his time. All the fundamental and basic teachings embedded in the esoteric teachings of every race may be traced back to Hermes. Even the most ancient teachings of India undoubtedly have their roots in the original Hermetic teachings. From the land of the Ganges, many advanced occultists wandered to the land of Egypt and sat at the feet of the master. From him they obtained the master key, which explained and reconciled their divergent views, and thus the secret doctrine was firmly established. From other lands also came the learned ones, all of whom regarded Hermes as the master of masters, and his influence was so great that in spite of the many wanderings from the path on the part of the centuries of teachers in these different lands, there may still be found a certain basic resemblance and correspondence which underlies the many and often quite divergent theories entertained and taught by the occultists of these different lands today. The student of comparative religions will be able to perceive the influence of the Hermetic teachings in every religion worthy of the name, now known to man, whether it be a dead religion or one in full vigor in our own times. There is always certain correspondence in spite of the contradictory features, and the Hermetic teachings act as the great reconciler. The life work of Hermes seems to have been in the direction of planting the great seed, truth, which has grown and blossomed in so many strange forms, rather than to establish a school of philosophy which would dominate the world's thought. But nevertheless, the original truths taught by him have been kept intact in their original purity by a few men each age, who, refusing great numbers of half-developed students and followers, followed the Hermetic custom and reserved their truth for the few who were ready to comprehend and master it. From lip to ear, the truth has been handed down among the few. There have always been a few initiates in each generation in the various lands of the earth who kept alive the sacred flame of the Hermetic teachings, and such have always been willing to use their lamps to relight the lesser lamps of the outside world when the light of truth grew dim and clouded by reason of neglect, and when the wicks became clogged with foreign matter. There were always a few to tend faithfully the altar of the truth, upon which was kept alight the perpetual lamp of wisdom. These men devoted their lives to the labor of love, which the poet has so well stated in his lines, quote, "Oh, let not the flame die out, cherished age after age in its dark cavern, in its holy temples cherished, fed by pure ministers of love, let not the flame die out." These men have never sought popular approval, nor numbers of followers. They were indifferent to these things, for they know how few there are in each generation who are ready for the truth, or who would recognize it if it were presented to them. They reserve the strong meat for men, while others furnish the milk for babes. They reserve their pearls of wisdom for the few elect who recognize their value and who wear them in their crowns, instead of casting them before the materialistic vulgar swine who would trample them in the mud and mix them with their disgusting mental food. But still, these men have never forgotten or overlooked the original teachings of Hermes regarding the passing on of the words of truth to those who are ready to receive it, which teaching is stated in the Kybalion as follows, quote, "Where fall the footsteps of the master, the ears of those ready for his teachings open wide." And again, quote, "When the ears of the student are ready to hear, then cometh the lips to fill them with wisdom," end quote. But their customary attitude has always been strictly in accordance with the Hermetic aphorism, also in the Kybalion, quote, "The lips of wisdom are closed, except to the ears of understanding," unquote. There are those who have criticized this attitude of the Hermetists, and who have claimed that they did not manifest the proper spirit in their policy of seclusion and reticence. But a moment's glance back over the pages of history will show the wisdom of the masters, who knew the folly of attempting to teach to the world that which it was neither ready nor willing to receive. The Hermetists have never sought to be martyrs, and have instead sat silently aside with a pitying smile on their closed lips, while the, quote, heathen raged noisily about them, end quote, in their customary amusement of putting to death and torture the honest but misguided enthusiasts who imagined that they could force upon a race of barbarians the truth, capable of being understood only by the elect who had advanced along the path. And, you know, the thing is, Mark, I agree with Mark, because he decided to share this knowledge, and it's not, and he stated, and I agree with this, it's not up to me to decide who's ready to hear this and who isn't. That's up to God, the creator, to decide. And you know, this harkens back to something I despise about certain religions, where they think they have the right to try to force other people to become a part of that religion. And they claim that in their texts, they're told they have to do that. To me, that would be a sign that that text has been infiltrated by humans, because only humans would think that they had the power to actually make other people change over to their point of view. It's only by action, by walking your talk, that you can persuade other people to be interested in what you're doing. And it's really up to the creator to decide who's ready. So I'm going along with that point of view. I'm not going to keep this quiet either, because we're at this point. We're at a point, and you know, it's interesting because I was just listening to the podcasts where Mark starts talking about the Kybalion, number 75, 74, 75, and 76 in the original podcasts, which were, I think he made in 2010. And that's when he was saying that we're at a place now where, you know, we could destroy the earth. That's where, and we're in the process of destroying it. You know, there was that post I saw today, which I passed on, that the Republicans in the House of New Hampshire are proposing a bill against geoengineering. Thank God, finally, you know, and so if that bill passes, then chemtrails will no longer be considered a conspiracy theory, and the rest of the states can start to also propose bills similar to that bill. But, you know, we are destroying the earth right now. We're full swing. And when I say we, you know, I mean the globalists. The globalists are influencing the order followers to carry out terrible, destructive actions upon the earth, including, you know, the 40,000 satellites in the ionosphere, and the 5G towers and the 6G towers, and that are destroying insects and birds and small animals and bees. And many of us are standing by hopelessly. And maybe more of us are employing the laws in these books to try to enact our own power over this atrocity, this genocide of our planet and each other by the dark occult, for whatever their nefarious purpose is. Okay, the spirit of persecution has not as yet died out in the land. There are certain hermetic teachings which, if publicly promulgated, would bring down upon the teachers a great cry of scorn and revilement from the multitude, who would again raise the cry of crucify, crucify. In this little work, we have endeavored to give you an idea of the fundamental teachings of the Kybalion, striving to give you the working principles, leaving you to apply them yourselves rather than attempting to work out the teaching in detail. If you are a true student, you will be able to work out and apply these principles. If not, then you must develop yourself into one, for otherwise the Hermetic teachings will be as words, words, words to you. The three initiates. Chapter 1, the Hermetic philosophy. The lips of wisdom are closed except to the ears of understanding, the Kybalion. From old Egypt have come the fundamental esoteric and occult teachings, which have been so strongly influenced the philosophies of all races, nations, and peoples for several thousand years. Egypt, the home of the pyramids and the Sphinx, was the birthplace of the hidden wisdom and mystic teachings. From her secret doctrine, all nations have borrowed. India, Persia, Chaldea, Media, China, Japan, Assyria, ancient Greece and Rome, and other ancient countries partook liberally at the feast of knowledge, which the hierophants and masters of the land of Isis so freely provided for those who came prepared to partake of the great store of mystic and occult lore, which the masterminds of the ancient land had gathered together. In ancient Egypt dwelt the great adepts and masters who have never been surpassed, and who seldom have been equaled during the centuries that have taken their processional flight since the days of the great Hermes. In Egypt was located the great lodge of lodges of the mystics. At the doors of her temples entered the neophytes who afterward, as hierophants, adepts, and masters, traveled to the four corners of the earth, carrying with them the precious knowledge, which they were ready, anxious, and willing to pass on to those who were ready to receive the same. All students of the occult recognize the debt that they owe to these venerable masters of the ancient land. But among these great masters of ancient Egypt, there once dwelt one of whom masters hailed as the master of masters. This man, if, quote, man, indeed, he was, dwelt in Egypt in the earliest days. He was known as Hermes Trismegistus. He was the father of the occult wisdom, the hidden wisdom. We hid it. It could have not been hidden. The founder of astrology, the discoverer of alchemy, the details of his life story are lost to history, owing to the lapse of the years, though several of the ancient countries disputed with each other in their claims to the honor of having furnished his birthplace, and this thousands of years ago. The date of his sojourn in Egypt, in that his last incarnation on this planet, is not now known, but it has been fixed at the early days of the oldest dynasties of Egypt, long before the days of Moses. The best authorities regard him as a contemporary of Abraham, and some of the Jewish traditions go so far as to claim that Abraham acquired a portion of his mystic knowledge from Hermes himself. As the years rolled by after his passing from this plane of life, tradition recording that he lived 300 years in the flesh, the Egyptians deified Hermes and made him one of their gods under the name of Thoth, Thoth. Years after, the people of ancient Greece also made him one of their many gods, calling him Hermes, the god of wisdom. The Egyptians revered his memory for many centuries, yes, tens of centuries, calling him the scribe of the gods, and bestowing upon him distinctively his ancient title Trismegistus, which means the thrice great, the great great, the greatest great, etc. In all the ancient lands, the name of Hermes Trismegistus was revered, the name being synonymous with the fount of wisdom. Even to this day, we use the term hermetic in the sense of secret, sealed so that nothing can escape, etc. And this by reason of the fact that the followers of Hermes always observed the principle of secrecy in their teachings. They did not believe in casting pearls before swine, but rather held to the teaching, milk for babes, meat for strong men, both of which maxims are familiar to readers of the Christian scriptures, but both of which have been used by the Egyptians for centuries before the Christian era. And this policy of careful dissemination of the truth has always characterized the Hermetics, even unto the present day. The Hermetic teachings are to be found in all lands, among all religions, but never identified with any particular country, nor with any particular religious sect. This because of the warning of the ancient teachers against allowing the secret doctrine to become crystallized into a creed. The wisdom of this caution is apparent to all students of history. The ancient occultism of India and Persia degenerated and was largely lost owing to the fact that the teachers became priests and so mixed theology with the philosophy, the result being that the occultism of India and Persia has been gradually lost amidst the mass of religious superstition, cults, creeds, and gods. So it was with ancient Greece and Rome. So it was with the Hermetic teachings of the Gnostics and early Christians, which were lost at the time of Constantine, whose iron hand smothered philosophy with the blanket of theology, losing to the Christian church that which was its very essence and spirit, and causing it to grope throughout several centuries before it found the way back to its ancient faith. The indications apparent to all careful observers in this 20th century being that the church is now struggling to get back to its ancient mystic teachings. But there were always a few faithful souls who kept alive the flame, tending it carefully and not allowing its light to become extinguished. And thanks to these staunch hearts and fearless minds, we have the truth still with us, but it is not found in books to any great extent. It has been passed along from master to student, from initiate to hierophant, from lip to ear. When it was written down at all, its meaning was veiled in terms of alchemy and astrology, so that only those possessing the key could read it aright. This was made necessary in order to avoid the persecutions of the theologians of the Middle Ages who fought the secret doctrine with fire and sword, stake, gibbet, and cross. Even to this day, there will be found but few reliable books on the Hermetic philosophy, although there are countless references to it in many books written on various phases of occultism. And yet the Hermetic philosophy is the only master key which will open the doors of the occult teachings. And these days, it's materialism that would kill it, because everybody has to have their spin so they can make their money, their fake green paper. And that's where you can find a lot of these teachings, but they're obscured by each individual person's need to be special and different in order to make the big bucks. In early days, there was a compilation of certain basic Hermetic doctrines passed on from teacher to student, which was known as the Kybalion, the exact significance and meaning of the term having been lost for several centuries. This teaching, however, is known to many to whom it was descended from mouth to ear on and on throughout the centuries. Its precepts have never been written down or printed so far as we know. It was merely a collection of maxims, axioms, and precepts, which were non-understandable to outsiders, but which were readily understood by students after the axioms, maxims, and precepts had been explained and exemplified by the Hermetic initiates to their neophytes. These teachings really constituted the basic principles of the art of Hermetic alchemy, which, contrary to the general belief, dealt in the mastery of mental forces rather than material elements. The transmutation of one kind of mental vibrations into others, instead of the changing of one kind of metal into another. The legends of the philosopher's stone, which would turn base metal into gold, was an allegory relating to Hermetic philosophy, readily understood by all students of true Hermeticism. In this little book, of which this is the first lesson, we invite our students to examine into the Hermetic teachings as set forth in the Kybalion and as explained by ourselves, humble students of the teachings, who, while bearing the title of initiates, are still students at the feet of Hermes, the master. We herein give you many of the maxims, axioms, and precepts of the Kybalion, accompanied by explanations and illustrations, which we deem likely to render the teachings more easily comprehended by the modern student, particularly as the original text is purposely veiled in obscure terms. The original maxims, axioms, and precepts of the Kybalion are printed herein in italics, the proper credit being given. Our own work is printed in the regular way, in the body of the work. We trust that many students to whom we now offer this little work will derive as much benefit from the study of its pages as have the many who have gone on before, treading the same path to mastery throughout the centuries that have passed since the times of Hermes Trismegistus, the master of masters, the great, in the words of the Kybalion. Where fall the footsteps of the master, the ears of those ready for his teachings open wide, the Kybalion. When the ears of the student are ready to hear, then cometh the lips to fill them with wisdom, the Kybalion. So that, according to the teachings, the passage of this book to those ready for the instruction will attract the attention of such as are prepared to receive the teachings. And likewise, when the pupil is ready to receive the truth, then will this little book come to him or her. Such is the law. The Hermetic principle of cause and effect, in its aspect of the law of attraction, will bring lips and ear together, pupil and book in company. So mote it be. So I'm going to stop there. That was chapter 1. And I've been practicing these principles for many years, and they're transformative. So I highly recommend them. And the thing is the CIA has gotten a hold of all of this stuff, and that's what is at the basis of MK Ultra, mind control, and the use of torture to create alternative personalities, so that as a negative way to achieve these principles. That's what they want. They want power over us. But these principles are available to us to gain power back. And that's why I'm going to be doing this for however long it takes to get through that book.